Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. I'd have you settle in a little bit before we kick off officially. Welcome to Canvas to Commerce. So I'm just going to wait a few seconds to get you settled in before we kick off officially. Okay, I think I'll do an introduction quickly. First, I would like to say thank you for honoring our invitation. I know that you probably have a very busy schedule, and this is Thursday, right? But you have chosen to honor our invitation. So we really do appreciate you. Welcome to Canvas to Commerce, Redesigning Skills, Building for Africa's Creative Future. My name is Ifnanya Igu. I'm a broadcast journalist, and I will be the moderator for this very insightful session. And I must say it's going to be very insightful because we have a panel of brilliant speakers that will be introducing to you shortly. And we're going to be talking about Africa's creative economy. Now, we understand that Africa is teeming with a youthful population. And we always say that our creative industry is underutilized. We have the creativity, right? We have the numbers. But how do we move from the anecdotes, those, conversations into actionable steps that move our creative economy forward? How do we ensure that we are utilizing what we have, that we're not wasting the talent and the potential? So we're going to be having conversations, diverse conversations across skill development, policy building, building infrastructure, bringing investment into the economy so that we can see the best out of our creative economy. Of course, this is brought to you by Ananse. Ananse is supported by MasterCard Foundation, and this event is in collaboration with both of them. I will not give you all the information just yet. I believe we have just the right person who will introduce better what this conversation is all about. And I will be calling on the founder of Ananse, right? Ananse, from what we knew from the very beginning, started off as, an e-commerce platform, to ensure that African creatives and artisans were telling their stories to the global market. Absolutely brilliant. But they moved beyond that to ensure that they were part and parcel of skill building for these artisans and these creatives, creating a platform for them to develop the right skills, for them to have access to the right resources, to ensure that they're going beyond just creating an e-commerce platform, but to make sure that they were utilizing everything that they had available for the creatives to ensure that they were making the best out of it. So I will be introducing the founder, the CEO of Ananse, Mr. Sam Mensah, who is going to be giving the welcome address. Sam, please go ahead.
Good morning, Ife. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. Thank you for making the time to join us for this important conversation. As I have been introduced, my name is Sam Mensah, originally from Ghana, based in Johannesburg, between Johannesburg and Lagos, and I'm the founder of Ananse. I'll start off by telling you a little bit about Ananse and what our vision was initially. So the big idea was initially to give African creatives access to market. We are blessed on the African continent with a rich culture, rich stories, rich tapestry of fabrics from various parts of the continent. And we're also blessed with an abundance of talent. talent that takes all of these ingredients, all of these inspirations from around them, from around the continent, to produce beautiful pieces of fashion that people all over Africa and around the world want to wear and want to own. So we saw an opportunity to build a platform that will facilitate the access of fashion creatives to both local and international markets. And this idea had been in the works and was accelerated by the COVID pandemic, because then it was really important for fashion creatives to migrate to selling online, because we were all having challenges and struggling to move around normally as we did. So e-commerce became crucial. It became essential. Whereas previously for many small fashion creatives, it had been, they were able to survive without it. And and so initially the idea was to support e-commerce for fashion creatives across the continent. When we started doing that, we learned a lot. And what we learned was when creatives had access to markets and the orders started coming in, we then started to notice and realize some of the gaps that existed that were making it difficult for creatives to thrive and distribute their products to international markets. A designer, for example, would get an order and would fulfill the order, but customers will experience difficulties with the quality of the finishing. And the quality of the finishing could be a skills issue. Other times it was also an access to the right kind of tools for the creative to finish off that product in a way that was acceptable to consumers. The other challenge we observed was the presentation of products. And this was something we had to work with creatives to address. When a customer is shopping online, they're not buying a product, they're not buying a dress. They're buying a picture of a dress or a video of a dress and the promise that in a few days' time, they will get a dress that looks like the picture or the video that they bought online. So we also came to realize the importance of digital merchandising, digital marketing, and social media, and ensuring that designers, fashion creatives had access to the tools and the know-how to be able to present their products in a manner that made it attractive to local and international buyers. We also were surprised by other challenges that we encountered, which were perhaps more unexpected. So we would assume that typically a fashion creative who receives an order will know how to process an order, how to package an order for shipment, whether local or international, how to process a waybill, even what a waybill is, and how to manage that whole process of getting your product ready for international shipment. And we realized that there was a big gap here where a lot of the creatives just did not understand how international logistics worked. And the other challenge we saw was managing cash flows, how creatives struggled to, for example, fulfill an order because they did not have the cash flow at their disposal when they received an order in order to be able to source the fabric, pay the tailors, the pattern maker, and the people they needed to work in order to produce the product. And so we saw that the needs of the fashion creatives in successfully accessing markets went beyond just an e-commerce platform, which is effectively a market access tool, and that it required a lot more of a holistic structure, holistic support structure that took into account the various challenges that the fashion creatives were experiencing. And this is how Ananse expanded from being initially just a platform that focused on e-commerce to a platform that focused on training, skills development, and entrepreneurship support, giving designers more than just a tool to access or a platform to access markets, but actually equipping them with a toolkit, a set of skills that will enable them to transition from brick and mortar retail to e-commerce, but do so in a way that allows them to be successful because they are making good quality products, they are presenting these products well, and they also understand how international shipping and logistics works so that they can participate in that international digital economy. And the culmination of that was the launch approximately 2 weeks ago of the Ananse Fashion Hub in Nigeria, where the Ananse Center for Design, which is a fashion hub, where we partnered with the Mastercard Foundation to give fashion creatives access to a one-stop shop, a fully integrated fashion hub, everything a creative needs under one roof, that allows them to sample products, get training, do production, access equipment that they cannot ordinarily afford, state-of-the-art equipment. Rooms, we have 10 different types of studios, rooms for photography, for content creation, clothing, leather studios, co-working space, computer-aided design training center, a showroom to showcase the work of designers to local and international media. And our vision is to continue to roll out these physical spaces that support e-commerce, because fundamentally fashion creatives make things with their hands, and access to digital tools and digital platforms is an enabler of trade. But without the fundamental access to the right skills, the right tools, the right equipment, the right mentors, it is impossible for fashion creatives, small fashion creatives, to be successful commercially and grow their businesses, scale their businesses internationally. And so at Ananse, we're quite proud to be part of this effort, this movement to equip and support fashion creatives across the African continent for global trade. We're currently active in 6 countries: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, Ivory Coast, and South Africa. We're looking forward very much to working with stakeholders across the continent to increase the level of support that is available, practical support that is available to fashion creatives in growing them and making them successful. And a successful fashion industry helps with job creation for young people. It helps with the empowerment of women. 70% of the creatives who are on our platforms and who participate in our trainings are women. And so the work that we're doing in partnership with like-minded fellow travelers is quite important for young people and women and fashion creatives on the African continent. So I'll leave my introductory remarks there, and we can we can expand on some of these themes later on during the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sam Mensah. And I believe just looking at how Ananse has expanded and extended into 6 African continents is a testament of how passionate Ananse Africa is to ensure that the fashion creatives are getting the very best support. You had mentioned that Ananse, obviously through research, has created a holistic support structure to ensure that it takes into account the different gaps that existed that the fashion creatives were experiencing. That definitely is a testament to all the hard work that Ananse Africa is doing. So thank you very much for that. And we're going to be hearing more from you during the conversation, the round table. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to be moving on to the very next segment. Now, we're not speaking from a vacuum. We're not speaking from assumptions. We're speaking from facts and figures. There has been research that has been done to identify what the gaps are, to identify how we're moving from point A to whatever the target and the goal is. And so just writing off of that research, we're going to be taking a look at a presentation of a key research insight from Ananse. Now, remember I had mentioned that this event is also done in collaboration with Botho Emerging Markets Group is a research and strategic advisory firm supporting Ananse's initiative through research, through strategy, through monitoring, through evaluation. And so we're going to be having a representative speaking on these key research insights. I would like to welcome Ngenzi Mwende, who's going to be sharing with us some numbers that will help guide the conversation moving forward.
Thank you so much, Ify. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, Sam, for the conversation that you started. And thank you all for being here and for taking time to attend this event. I'll get right into it. So, as Sam has mentioned and highlighted, the African creative sector actually has a lot of potential. It's actually doing really well. We have individuals who the sector is made up of a great population of young individuals. More than 70% of these individuals are young people below the age of 35 years old. 73% of them are women. And this is a population that in the next few years is going to be working really well and producing a lot of impact. The sector at the moment is currently valued at close to $31 billion, making it a high potential sector with a potential for growth, because it's estimated to get at close to 50 billion by the time we're getting 2030. But as Sam clearly mentioned, while Ananse has been working with more than 7,000 creatives in the sector, we've been able to pick up some nuances and some challenges that people are facing. One of the challenges is that more than 70% of these creatives who are in Africa are not able to export. They sell mainly to their domestic markets, to the next door neighbors, to the villages where they are. That's one of the things. So as part of Ananse and as part of Botho, we're working together. And one of the things we decided to do is find out why is this happening? Why is it that many people are not able to export? And we realized that 75% of these individuals do not either have beginner or no e-commerce understanding. And only 15% of them are on e-commerce platforms. That's a small number, and it cuts them out of a huge market, because you're going to the world is moving towards being a global marketplace where you're based in Kenya, but you can sell your goods to someone in Nigeria. You're based in Somalia, you can sell to someone in Ivory Coast. But if the largest market that we have is within our neighborhoods, that becomes a bit challenging. And continuing that discussion, we tried to identify why is this happening? Why is it that even though Africa's creativity is thriving, there is a lack of depth in terms of the skills that we have? People have no e-commerce skills, they have no digital sales skills, they have no e-commerce related skills, the digital marketing, social media management. So why is this happening? The main thing that we discovered is that this is because of fragmented systems. And at the core of this is that in Africa, of the 55 countries that we have, only 12 of them have a creative strategy in place. That means only 12 countries in Africa are actually actively planning for creatives. Even though this is our future, only 12 countries are actually planning for this. It means that majority of the creatives in African countries have no government support. They're not included in the strategy. There's no comprehensive creative strategy. So even in the countries where we have the creative strategy in place and in countries where we do not have a creative strategy in place, some may have mentioned this, is that we have training programs that are in place. There are countries with training programs that are already in place. But one of the key features is that for these training programs, they are sort of outdated, and I'll explain why I would say is that they are outdated. They're design schools and vocational programs offering basically piecemeal training, whereby they sort of overlook essential digital business export skills that are non-negotiable in the current sector that we're in the current world that we're in, where e-commerce is king and selling across the entire marketplace and across the entire globe is king. We are having courses that are overlooking this. That's the next thing. It's basically classroom bound, focused on design theory and ignoring these critical skills. Yes. So where we have this, moving on, where we have this, you'd notice that even when we have such programs, such trainings, there is limited access to infrastructure, whereby even if we have the digital training, it's mainly based in countries in Lagos or in Joburg, or in some countries, it's not evenly spread out. So there are many creatives across the country, across the continent that are unable to access this. And more so, the biggest group that bears the brunt of this are the women. As I mentioned earlier, 70% of the creatives who we've spoken to who are in the creative ecosystem, specifically fashion, are women. So they bear the brunt of this. And I'll show you why. It's because, let's take an example. You have to attend an online class on digital marketing, social media marketing. You need internet, you need data bundles. To buy 1 GB of data will cost 3.3% of your monthly income. And for some of the poorest people in this demographic, it will go up to 5%. And the women that we have, the people that we have in this ecosystem, women have, it shows in their internet, in their access to internet. Women have, among women, the internet penetration, only 39% of them are able to access internet compared to 50% of the men. So it shows that women are disproportionately disadvantaged when it comes to accessing internet, which limits them from accessing some of this online trading, online learning platforms, online courses that we may have. If we have in-person courses or in-person classes, the other challenge that they may have is that they have caregiving responsibilities. So the women have kids, they have to take care of someone, but because they are unable to attend the in-person classes because of this caregiving responsibilities, it limits them and keeps them from attaining this. And this is clear because in one of the trainings that Ananse conducted in Nairobi, they invited a group of women based in Nairobi. And one of the things was that these women had to carry their kids for these training platforms. So this will limit them from even fully benefiting from this. And this is a group that makes up 70% of this entire creative ecosystem. So how do we help them? How do we make sure that whatever skills we're designing, whatever programs we're offering, we get to take care and even bring into account this huge demographic? And there is a cost of inaction. Now we have to talk about what's the cost of doing nothing? Because we have to act. What's the cost of doing nothing? What happens if we don't do anything? One of the problems that's going to happen is we're talking about lost job creation for a youth population that's set to double by 2050. And more than 70% of these individuals are not able to export simply because of lack of knowledge and finance gaps. This inaction is sort of limiting our potential. We get to a point where we're not able to grow our revenue. Is It's estimated that the creative sector could bring in 200 billion in annual revenue by 2030. If we're not able to address this issue and ensure that the creatives in Africa are equipped to the necessary skills, they're able to trade digitally, they're able to sell, market their goods on e-commerce platforms and leverage these systems, well, we risk losing this potential revenue of $200 billion in annual revenue by 2030. And we also discussed for women and youth, this just perpetuates a cycle of low profitability, whereby even though they form the brunt of the workplace, they form the brunt of the workforce, because of the underutilized nature, because of them not benefiting from this, it's just going to be a real constraint on innovation that keeps African design on the margins globally. So that brings us to our goal for today, why we all are here, why we have Ify, why we have Sam, all the other speakers, and everyone here. The main question that we're talking about is how do we move from fragmentation to transformation? That's the main question that we're talking about. This roundtable that we are having here today seeks to identify how can Africa transition from fragmented, outdated programs to more modern, market-aligned skill development systems. Yeah, that's what we're here to discuss. And it's our chance to unpack the structural gaps that are actually there, and more importantly, highlight the innovations that will build Africa's next creative workforce. Thank you. I think, Ify, you can take it from there and we can continue.
Wow, Ngenzi, thank you so much. So much enlightenment has come from just a few minutes that you've shared all this information with us. Like I did mention, we're not speaking from a vacuum, and what I think is very pivotal that we must mention is that we're not just looking for random solutions. We're not just looking for a one-size-fits-all solutions. We're looking for a tailor-made solution, because you did mention that 70% of the creatives who feel the brunt of this fragmentation or these gaps in the system are women. So whatever solution that you're creating or you're designing, it's being designed with these specific pieces of information in mind, so that at the end of the day, when that solution is implemented, we would see the desired result. And I like that you also did mention the cost of not moving, the cost of not creating a preferring solution. You spoke about stunting our revenue, the endless possibilities that could come from the creative sector as well. And you also spoke about the possibility of loss of job creation, because there's several opportunities that could come from the creative sector. Thank you so much, Ngenzi, for sharing all these details with us, and we're definitely looking forward to the roundtable, which we're going to be having right now. And so once again, if you're just joining us, this is Canvas to Commerce. It's brought to you by Ananse. Ananse is supported by the MasterCard Foundation, and this event is in collaboration with Botho. We just had a representative of Botho who shared with us key insights that will guide our conversation moving forward. So we're going to be having a very robust roundtable, because from the key insights, a lot of the issues that Ngenzi did highlight cut across different sectors and industries, right? It cut across aspects of policy making, because he had mentioned that to a large extent, some of the issues being faced by the creatives is a lack of government support. He also spoke about, skill gaps in certain areas. So we're going to make sure that this conversation is going to touch on these different sectors and these different segments. And that's the reason why we're very, very key on the quality of panelists that we ensured were a part of this conversation. So I will be introducing across our different panelists. I'll be introducing Somachi Chris Asoluka, who is the CEO of Tony Elumelu Foundation. And she's going to be here on the roundtable today. And Bayo Omoboriwa, who is the founder of Ananse Africa, is also a part of this roundtable. We also have Lauren England, who's a senior lecturer in creative economies in King's College, London as well. And we have Rita Ngenzi, who's the founding and managing director, Africa Creative Alliance as well. And we're also going to have Dr. Issa E. Omagu, who's the Chief Strategy and Development Officer and Divisional Head Strategy, Policy and Research, Bank of Industry, and of course the founder and CEO of Ananse Africa, Samuel Mensah. Good morning to all our panelists. Can everyone hear me clearly? Okay, yes, I can see your heads nodding. So welcome. First of all, I must say thank you so much for being a part of this. I would always say that for individuals such as yourselves to be a part of this roundtable, it is a testament of your concern and your interest in ensuring that Africa's creative economy moves from just mere potential to results that move the economy forward. So thank you so much. And our conversation is going to be divided into different segments because, like I did mention, there's specific areas that were highlighted by Ngenzi, speaking about policy, speaking about training, investment, and things like that. So we're going to ensure that we are dissecting it bit by bit. So starting off with the curriculum deficits to ensure that we're aligning training with market realities. And so we're just going to begin with Lauren England, who of course is a lecturer at King's College London. Lauren, from your research into global creative economies, where do you see the biggest disconnect between what's being taught and what the market actually needs? Because with what Ngenzi mentioned, there's specific areas that we would say are peculiar to the systems and structures even within Africa. So what would you say the disconnect is?
Thank you very much, Ify. It's a real pleasure to be here on the panel today. So I think a lot of what our research has shown really echoes, firstly, what Sam was saying was the kind of driving force for starting Ananse, and then also what Ngenzi was reporting from that excellent piece of research that's been done into the market needs. It's our research has highlighted in the education space the challenges for students of design, particularly in the fashion space, to understand really the practicalities of then how do you run a business on the ground? How do you manage your budgets? How do you manage your cash flow? That came up. The issues around, in your local environment, how do you register for your tax system? These are issues that creatives across the world face. I don't think this is necessarily distinct to the African context, but it's about how do you understand the sort of rules and regulations for starting up a business, particularly if you are interested then in exporting. I think what's particularly challenging is sort of new compliance regulations, particularly around sort of sustainability for exported goods. If you're looking at accessing wider continental or wider international sort of European or North American markets, what rules and regulations do you have to follow to be able to reach those markets? I think those are some key gaps. But beyond that sort of business training, I think one of those key areas is that production focus. There's a huge emphasis on design theory, being creative, but perhaps not necessarily being attached to the high level production skills that the industry needs. So when in our research, we've spoken to more established designers looking to grow their brands, what they're struggling with is skilled labor to produce at the quality that is needed for that export market. So we're going, really kind of high level, good quality kind of tailoring skills, pattern making, pattern cutting, understanding your material. Do you understand what is going to be viable for your design in the material that you've chosen? Do you understand what's going to be economical in the design that you want to make? Is this viable as a constructed garment? Is it going to be sustainable to produce? So I think those are some key gaps that we've highlighted in our research that really echoes, the work that Ananse is doing and that piece of research that's come out.
All right, thank you very much, Lauren. I think that was very, very insightful. So I'm just going to move on to Rita right now, because we are still taking a look at the gaps, the skill gaps within the system that we have identified within the African fashion and design industry. So Rita, just taking a look at all of this from an industry lens, right? What business or digital competencies do you consistently find missing among the creatives that you have worked with over the years? And how do you think that the industry could help bridge the gap in real time?
Thank you, Ife, and thanks for having me. I think Lauren touched a lot on it. And with us as the Alliance, the Africa Creatives Alliance, the larger question was really not necessarily around the skills per se, because we know what some of the gaps around the skills are. When you speak about e-commerce, about digital marketing, financial management, pricing, etc. But the way that we viewed it, particularly from a lot of the work on ground, is the missing structure around it. So what does it look like when you begin to connect? And I think Lauren touched on this, the learning to production and then production to market. And we've seen that skills development really only becomes meaningful when it's anchored in systems that make it practical and market connected. So that means, how are we linking training to spaces where you can actually produce, you can test, and you can trade? And for us, this is why at the core of it, our focus is really on the intermediaries, which we see as the fastest, most scalable approach, because ideally the average creative, whether in Nairobi, in Kampala, in Accra, cannot afford the infrastructure. Whether you're talking about the tools for trade, whether you're talking about the production spaces, the logistics, the digital tools that allow them to put these skills into practice. And so it becomes very classroom-based and remains at that point. And that's where these intermediaries come in. So when you're talking about the hubs, the incubators, the maker spaces that now begin to act as the shared production and innovation hubs. And we've seen this tested with one of the models, Motive, which is East Africa's largest makerspace, that begins to fuse the skilling and production. I know Bayo is also going to be speaking, and he's doing the same as well with Tikera. And really, it's the approach of saying, how do we turn these spaces into shared production and innovation hubs that now give these creatives access to tools for trade, to shared equipment, to structured support that a single creative would never be able to sustain on their own, because these intermediaries now help you to begin to de-risk. So they're bridging that training to actual enterprise, because that's the conversation here on enterprise. There's no lack of talent, but how do we now begin to build and to churn out viable enterprises that speak to the sector? And that's where you now start talking about supply chains, about buyers, about pathways for investment. So for us, that is the approach that we see is the most feasible. And the same came out in our Moonshot 8 report, which really began to understand, and in the conversations that we had with development financing partners, with investors and so forth, the common theme that came out was we don't have, the bankable enterprises or the intermediaries. And we are saying that some of them do exist, right? But it's how do we begin to move beyond what is the pathway to skilling that makes it as practical as possible? How do we now begin to build shared infrastructure, market linkages that make the whole system investable? And that's the approach that we take really as the Alliance, and we see as the most scalable approach to actual skilling, because we know that skills aren't enough until you're turning those skills into trade and you're able to produce real live environments that address some of the issues we heard in the previous speakers. Things about the finishing is not what you would expect when it comes to actual e-commerce integration. You're not seeing it, but that's because beyond the classroom, so maybe we need to rethink our idea or what we envision as skilling, but also from a sustainable perspective, we have to move away from the programmatic thinking, but more on system and infrastructure building around the skilling pathways.
Thank you very much. That's very well said. And we have identified that these skill gaps exist, and we need to maybe rethink, what upscaling could look like. But even with the availability of these different methods of upscaling or, skills acquisition, if there isn't access to it, little or nothing can be done. So it's one thing to have these trainings available, and it's another thing to have access to these trainings and these opportunities. I mean, we've seen what Ananse is doing with the Center for Design, absolutely brilliant. We launched it about 2 weeks ago, and it was well thought out because there are several aspects that were being considered, before that structure came to be. But I want to direct this conversation to Bayo. Bayo, we know that you've worked closely with creatives in emerging regions, right? What approaches have you seen or pioneered that help bring access to skills, mentorship, and digital tools beyond the major cities? Because we see like a lot of, these hubs may be concentrated in places like Lagos and in Johannesburg, but what about the interlands? What about those places that they may not have easy access?
Yeah, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks everyone for having me here. I recognize everyone. Rita, Dr. Lauren, it's a pleasure to be here once again. And it's a great work Ananse Africa is doing. I give a big salute to Ananse Africa. We need more institutions like this to take Africa to where it deserves to be. And I'm talking about the seats of sitting down on the table with global players. So we are not in a pity party situation as Africa. I think we just need to realize that we are the future and the future is now. But that future is not going to happen in isolation. We need to play with the world. We need to contribute the value that we carry as a people and ensure that the world can see, appreciate, and collaborate with us for us to get to where we deserve. But specifically to your question, I think one of the missing gap is that we are leaving a lot of people behind. In this journey of development within the creative and cultural industries, there's so much, and I don't blame the players, both governments, policymakers, private investors, funders, development partners, and we that are playing within the CCI. Because first, everybody's looking for quick win. We want to look, you set up that you are doing something substantial. So the quick win syndrome is there, and you can't blame it. It's just what it is. But one of the things that we must realize is that and that's the approach we're using at Take Care Africa, leaving no one behind. It's a philosophy with which we work. Leaving no one behind is a model that we have designed. That yes, we have Madhouse, which is the first purpose-built creative incubator in Lagos. Inside University of Lagos, we have that built, institutionalized. But we also realize that no matter how much we impact the Lagos players, the young creatives who are in the university environment, Madhouse right now is inside University of Lagos. No matter how much we pay attention to those people, the mass majority of our people as Nigerians are in the rural areas. They are the ones that make up the biggest number. The challenge we are facing in Africa, a lot of it is coming from that, from that side of the everyday people. How do we ensure that we skill them up? So for us, it's all about upskilling. For us, it's all about bringing them to the center of the conversation. For us, it's all about also understanding their own typology, their uniqueness. There's something unique about them. There's also the way they want to be educated. You can't say, oh, no, let's go and, approach development in that area the same way we are dealing with it in Lagos. So for us, it's all about bringing it down to the way they get to understand it. Number two is approaching it from the place where their problem is put into consideration. For instance, we just started a program called Weaving Futures. Weaving Futures is simply talking about the underserved Nigerian woman who already has a skill in her hand. And if you go to every home around Nigeria, there's something, either they are weaving something, they are weaving a northern cap like Dr. Issa is wearing, they are weaving baskets, they are weaving raffia, they are weaving fabric. It's there. Why don't we come down to that level and skill them up? Guess what we'll do? We might not be able to make them competitive to the global markets, but we can bring innovation to them, where we bring the students that we've trained in Madhouse, fuse them together, where the Mama Risikat, who is weaving baskets, might not be able to speak big English, but she might be able to transfer knowledge to the young students in University of Lagos or in Kwara State Polytechnic. That bridge is where Tekera Africa is, where we will leave no one behind, but with those people at the grassroots, with the artisans, with the craftsmen, we will fuse them with the innovation of those that went to universities, went to polytechnics, and innovation will emerge. That is the way we've approached it. That is the way we are approaching it. We are trying to understand their peculiarities. We want to domesticate skill development. We want to invest in the grassroots. And at the end of the day, we believe that the effort we are making, the other players, both development organizations, the funders, the partners, the investors, government will see this and then begin to follow us in that direction. But we cannot leave anyone behind. And that's the approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bayo. I'm just going to take from your words, leave no one behind, which is absolutely brilliant. You know, what's the point of creating these complicated solutions that the average Nigerian or the average African woman or man does not understand? You know, if there are language barriers, how about you take that into consideration to ensure that whatever solutions it is that you are bringing is effective when you do implement it? Thank you so much, Bayo. That was very brilliantly put. Now, Mr. Sam Mensah, let's move to you. Because we know that based on Ananse's work, training over 5,000 creatives, and of course, establishing the 1,200 square meters Lagos Fashion Hub, what lesson can be drawn about how to make training both scalable and high quality? You know, what are those partnerships that are most critical to ensure that this becomes a reality?
Thank you for the question. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So yes, partnerships are essential for a project of this kind. You know, as many speakers have mentioned, the challenges and the problems we're solving are complex, and it's the level of complexity that goes beyond the capabilities of any one single actor in the ecosystem. So it requires collaboration between the private sector, between organizations and foundations like Mastercard Foundation, private sector partners like players like Ananse, governments and policymakers, other research institutions, NGOs, and it really requires us coming together of various players to tackle these complex issues that have created a vicious cycle that we must break. To Bayo's point about, you know, no pity party. But we find that many young creatives are trapped in this vicious cycle of informality, as a result of which they have limited resources. They have access to limited resources and equipment. They therefore produce products of inconsistent and substandard quality. As a result, their customer base is limited, small, stays very local, and their income cannot grow. So what centers like ours does is break that vicious cycle. And we break that vicious cycle with interventions in partnership with some of the organizations that I've mentioned, in order to provide the resources, the investments that are required in order for creatives to access previously inaccessible resources. So the facility, for example, has over 10 different studios, leather, clothing, podcast, content, branding spaces, the different types of industrial machines. I believe one of the speakers mentioned shared production and innovation and shared access to shared equipment. So this is a model that we are also rolling out at the hub, where we have really equipment that is really essential to creating high quality products, high quality bags, high quality shoes. Laser branding equipment. A lot of African creatives struggle with branding their products, labeling their products. So having facilities for that. Then the training centers. And again, there was a reference earlier to transitioning from training to enterprise. And a center like this supports that transition. So we're not only giving you training, but you can actually access the services and the tools that you need in order to actually run and grow your business. From equipment rentals, space rentals, production and sampling, branding, embroidery, all of those things that really make a product stand out and be successful on the merits of how well it's been made. And the partnerships mean that, for example, a partnership with an organization like MasterCard Foundation enables the creation of a center like the one we have created in Lagos. And then a partnership with the Ministry of Arts, Culture, Tourism, and Creative Economy in Nigeria, for example, means now that we have a conversation with government about policy and how we can scale these kinds of initiatives and reduce the barriers. The private sector and NGOs have access to resources, but we don't have the same level of resources that governments do. Governments, however, tend to be slow. They are very bureaucratic, and it takes them a long time to get things done. So oftentimes we are more nimble. We can experiment. We can come up with blueprints for fresh ideas, new ideas, and then we partner with governments, in this case, a ministry in Nigeria dedicated to the creative sector, to look at how we now take these models and scale them up quickly to other parts of the country beyond just Lagos, for example, or just Johannesburg, but going and meeting the people where they are, and those kinds of that kind of progress requires partnerships, because it is impossible for one organization or one player to do it alone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sam, for putting that out there. I mean, even this conversation, this roundtable is also a testament to partnerships, seeing every individual representing different facets of the industry and the economy as well is a testament to those partnerships as well. But I thank you for also mentioning.
I just actually, sorry to interrupt.
No, carry on.
I actually wanted to make a point also about the women creatives and how these partnerships need to ensure that the women in the industry, again, I quote Bayo when he says, "No one left behind." Because of the structure of our societies, women are more likely to get left behind. Because the bulk of domestic responsibilities and childcare falls upon them. So you could put together a fantastic program. You could put together a fantastic center that has fantastic facilities. But if the mother has no childcare, no access to childcare, cannot afford childcare, then she cannot use your center unless the center makes provision, provides a place where she can leave the baby or leave the child for someone to take care of while she's training or while she's using the equipment. Unless the center has a place, for example, where she can nurse, where she's breastfeeding, she can nurse and attend to the child. I mean, we have had trainings, and I think Mwanzia was alluding to that. Oftentimes in trainings, you will see women sitting at the back of the room, breastfeeding with one hand, holding the child and breastfeeding with one arm, and taking notes with the other arm in a class. And if we don't address the disparity, and we see the disparity in the figures, male creatives earn more than women creatives. If my memory serves me correctly, it's about 20% more. Male creatives have got access to more resources. They have access to more finance. They have access to more digital tools. They generally also tend to have access to more education and more skills. And so we have to be very deliberate in designing these interventions around women and involving the women in the process. Otherwise, as an industry, we will not succeed, because the industry is 70% women. 70% of the creatives who are participating in the fashion programs are women. And so I'm quite pleased that at the center we have included this in the design of the space, made provision for women in kids' rooms where childcare can be made available, where women can nurse babies and breastfeed in relative privacy, and these kinds of interventions are it's important that these interventions are really centered around women creatives and what they need. Have we lost Ify?
Here, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right, perfect.
I just gave a very fantastic speech on gender, which you missed.
You did. You did say that, and I like that, because that brings us into our next conversation, where we're going to actually talk about inclusivity, because I love the fact that you mentioned how women, they also experience the lower end of the stick, in terms of the infrastructure not being built to accommodate nature when they want to, which I believe is very pivotal and very key. And I know that Mwanzi had mentioned as well that over 70% of the key players within the industry are women. And unfortunately, they do not profit as much as they should, being the key players. And I believe that this now goes to Dr. Hakeem Onasanya, who is the Director of Operations, Tony Elumelu Foundation. Dr. Hakeem, we know that Tony Elumelu Foundation has supported thousands and thousands of women. We see the reports each year. Now, from your experience, Mr. Sam spoke about infrastructure. He gave that as an example, right? From your experience, what do you see is a structural barrier that creatives, from scaling, and how can training programs be redesigned to ensure that it is addressing this issue?
Thank you very much, Ify. Please confirm that you can hear me clearly.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, so thank you very much, Ify. And interestingly, I think everybody has alluded to the fact that the creative economy, the creative sector, is very pivotal to Africa's prosperity. It has significant and immense potential to empower the young people and to also create jobs on the continent. Yes, the foundation has supported thousands. In fact, we have trained, mentored, and funded over 21,000 entrepreneurs across the 54 African countries. We have disbursed in excess of $100 million, and these entrepreneurs have gone on to create over 1.5 million direct and indirect jobs, as well as lift over 2 million people out of poverty. Of this number that we've done, I think about half of them have been women. And that is because we are very, very conscious of inclusion. Inclusion not for the sake of inclusion, but because if we really, really want to transform the continent, if we really want to impact the household, if we really want to change the trajectory of the next generation, the people we should be funding are women. And in terms of the creative economy, I think about 15% of the entrepreneurs we funded have been entrepreneurs from the creative sector. We want to do more, and that is why one of the most important sectors in which we are looking at going down on and doing more is the creative sector. That's in the next 5 years. To your question about the barriers, when I finished from secondary school, my parents didn't want me to play up and down the streets and make friends. So they enrolled me in an art center where I went to learn how to make custom greeting cards and designs. And I think my fingers are still not straight because I had to hold the blade for months and if not years trying to cut perfectly into the very, very thick cards. And one thing we've noticed is that there is the concept of creativity in the creative sector. Yes, there is there is those ideas, there is the innovation, there is the thinking outside of the box and creating something new within your environment. But there is also the business of it, which is where there is a huge gap. The fact that you can, like Bayo said, and phenomenal work that is doing at Tekara, we had our first female founders session when I used to work with the government there, and fantastic initiative you're doing. Kudos. And he was mentioning the cap that Dr. Isa Omagu, Bank of Industry, is wearing. And yes, we have a lot of women up north who are weaving these caps. But the question is, did you understand the business of it? Did you understand that beyond weaving the caps is understanding what your client wants, is understanding how he wants it, it's understanding where he wants it. You cannot weave a cap for Dr. Isa Omagu and he expects it on the Monday because he's having to fly with it to the US on Monday night. And you say, oh, because creativity only comes to me on Wednesdays, I'll deliver it to him on Friday. Clearly, you've missed out an opportunity. So that is one thing that will be really, really happen at the foundation to help these young entrepreneurs understand the business of what they do. And that is why we have our business management training, which is hosted on TEF Connect, which is our digital platform. And this platform not only trains those we funded, but it's an open source platform where over 2.5 million people have had access to. And we teach them the basics of business, marketing, customer service, branding, leadership, on this structuring your business, even having your books. How many of these women who make these beautiful caps, who make these beautiful baskets, who make this lovely address can tell you how many customers they've served in 1 year, can tell you how much they made. If you ask them how much they make, they're not even able to differentiate between gross revenue and net revenue, between their profit and their inflow. So these are things that we really, really are interested and have done over the years. So train these people in this area. We even go beyond that. We also pair them with mentors, and these are mentors that see you are doing something phenomenal. But we need to make this into an enterprise. He has to leave the era of creativity into an enterprise. That is the only way in which that talent, that's the only way in which that innovation can transform lives. And the likes, imagine if the likes of Wizkid and Burna Boy just saw themselves as talented musicians in their rooms and dishing out music. They clearly would not have the impact they have on the continent that they have today. So we have mentors who hold their hands, who tell them, you have this dream, but we can refine it together. Finally, we even pair them, we even have master classes for them where we bring in CEOs, we bring in C-suite executives, we bring in captains of industries to train them, because like I keep saying, there is the business of creativity. And that is one thing that we really, really are doing for these entrepreneurs, taking them from where they are to where they ought to be. And in terms of access to these things, these are digital. And yes, we acknowledge that digital penetration is still not there on the continent. And we are trying to ensure that the cost of the bandwidth of these platforms is ridiculously low. Also, we try to, our sessions, I know it was Mensah that was saying the fact that women have to take some time off this training to cater for their kids, which is why our own sessions are self-paced. You can take them at any point during the day. It doesn't have to interfere with your life as a mother or with your life as a business owner. It is after we've done all of this that we then give them the seed funding that is needed. So for us, we are really, really bullish about converting this creative genius into sustainable enterprises on the continent. And we are committed to doing more in training them, in identifying them, in mentoring them, and in funding them. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hakeem, for that. Lauren, I'm just going to push this question to you very quickly. You know, we are still going to have more discussions about the things that need to be done or ought to be done to ensure that we're moving from the current level that we are to enterprise, to ensure that there is true result coming from the creative sector, you know, thanks to conversations such as this that could inform policies moving forward. What indicators or data systems can actually help us identify and capture the real outcome, you know, because saying all these things and creating these systems and these structures, how then do we know that they are actually working? So what do we put in place to ensure that we are measuring the real outcome?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Iffy. And I'm really sorry that I can't stay for the rest of the discussion. It has been fascinating, and I hope to be able to follow up with people later on. To hear about the fantastic work. I think that data question is really central. Understanding what change is it that you are trying to measure? You know, do you understand what is your theory of change? What is the impact you are trying to make? Once you have a clear understanding of that, you can then understand what metrics you're going to need to collect that. Is it about jobs that are created? Is it about the skills that have been developed? Is it about the number of products that someone has been able to export at the end of your program? Or is it a more qualitative kind of sense of well-being or empowerment that you're trying to capture? So that can then indicate whether you're going to need quantitative kind of metrics in the numbers, as it's around finance, job creation, or also more of that qualitative data that you're going to need different methods and techniques to capture. You're going to need to go out and speak with people on the ground. And often, it's those personal interactions that can really harness a lot of really valuable data. The numbers can tell you what, but that qualitative interaction can help to tell you why. And I think that's sort of speaking to the work of Ananse. You've got the numbers to back up those statistics, but you've got that on the ground experience and knowledge from conversing with the sector, the knowledge generated by these types of roundtable discussions, for example, that can really help to feed into those kind of actions and program implementation. So I think it's, having a clear sense of what impact you're trying to generate to then determine the figures or the metrics that you need and the methods that you need to collect that. Particularly if you're trying to track change, it's important you have a baseline that you can compare to. So you can directly show that at the start of your program, people's skill level was this. At the end of your program, you can demonstrate a measurable change at the end. And I think those are the sorts of figures and impacts that can help people really understand how to improve their business and also to inform the policy space. So that's something we're really keen to work on, sort of developing those monitoring and evaluation frameworks that are fit for the creative industries. There are great organizations like Andani, like Hiva Funds, like other creative organizations that are looking at how do you develop the models, the frameworks and the structures that enable better data collection for the creative industries, because it is really important. So yes, thank you very much. We're very happy to discuss more with panelists and others who are interested in this space.
All right, thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate that, and we appreciate the time that you spent with us today. And I love that you also mentioned that we, first of all, have to have a clear sense of what we want to achieve. And you mentioned that the qualitative, maybe solution, so to speak, could identify the why, and the quantitative, which is the numbers, would identify the what. And I believe that this brings me to Rita Ngenzi of the African Creative Alliance. Rita, I'm going to take you back a little bit to inclusivity and and inclusion. Now, speaking about the what and the why, how does your organization address inclusivity, and what can we actually learn from those programs that have successfully improved female participation? And I'm sure your organization knows what has successfully improved, because based on what Lauren was saying, there are methods in which you can ascertain what the results have been, and I'm so sure that African Creative Alliance has implemented some of those methods.
Yes, thank you, Effie. For me, really, inclusivity is really not even an option at this point in time. So we've seen scenarios, for example, that just by including a childcare room at a facility, it makes all the difference in terms of the participation of female creatives. Something as simple as childcare minders that are incorporated into programming, into interventions, makes such a huge difference to them. We've seen things such as looking at male-dominated industries and how do you intentionally get females participating within these sectors. That makes all the difference. And so really, it really comes down to understanding what are some of the structural barriers that exist. But even again, I speak to the shared facilities and tools for trade, because demographically or the socioeconomic conditions, you find that there are various barriers to entry for female creatives. But if you're creating safe spaces that allow them to participate until the mindset shift happens within the communities, then you're now beginning to see really more participation on their end. So there's a lot of sensitization that's also needed at community level as well. Otherwise, you face almost isolating them from a very important core support function of theirs. So it's really just around understanding what are some of the barriers to market, because we know that in a lot of African settings, women are one of the key providers in the homes. It's just that this is not being formally addressed, or the structures around them. So beyond the scaling, these are trades that are passed on through generations. But getting them into these spaces is where the barrier exists. Formalizing them as well is where the barrier exists. And sometimes it's a community change. And we've actually seen how the creative industry itself feeds into various sectors. So even within sensitization, there's something called the Buddies Network, the Creative Buddies Network, where creatives are able to mobilize and to build sensitization campaigns that have shifted thinking in communities, brought more visibility from government and policymakers level to shed light on the issues that are actually happening on ground. And it's why we constantly reinforce the need to begin to understand that we must have our ear to the ground and begin to work through structures that exist on ground and that represent the creatives, to have a better ear in knowing what are some of the key solutions that enable inclusivity in such a space.
Thank you so much for that one, Rita. Now, just even speaking about getting these creatives, or even the women in particular, into those spaces, we have spoken about access, we've spoken about getting them into those spaces. We must also be very conversant about the standards that exist. Right? So it's one thing giving them access to training. It's another thing making sure that the training or the resources or whatever it is that we're making available to them, it puts them at par in global standards on the global stage. And now this brings us to Dr. Issa Omagu of Bank of Industry. So Dr. Omagu, the Bank of Industry has been instrumental in financing SMEs through various sector-specific funds that actually support industrial capacity building. So from your perspective, how can financing institutions like Bank of Industry work with creative training programs to help these MSMEs not only access capital, but to also meet the quality and compliance? Because remember, it's not just local. Local is good, giving them access to local markets, but also giving them access to global markets and ensuring that they are part on those global standards.
Thank you very much, Ify. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Ananse for this opportunity to be, for the bank to be on this panel. Before I go specifically to your question, I'd like to just provide some kind of empirical framework, that will probably help to address my response to your question. And I'll basically go through it verbatim as written. The creative economy has emerged as one of Africa's most dynamic growth frontiers, combining culture, technology, and entrepreneurship into a transformative economic force. Mwazi, I think, mentioned the issue of transformation earlier on. Across the continent, creative industries spanning fashion, design, music, film, gaming, and digital content already employ more young people than traditional manufacturing sectors and contribute significantly to GDP. That's according to UNESCO report in 2023. However, there are limitations, and they stem primarily from underdeveloped skills ecosystems, weak digital infrastructure, fragmented financing, and limited access to global markets. What we would like to address in this particular session essentially is how do we transform informal, self-taught creativity into formal, scalable, export-ready enterprises. And I guess that's why this Ananse dialogue, which is themed Canvas to Commerce, Redesigning Skills Building for Africa's Creative Future, underscore this urgency. It calls for new approaches that link training, innovation, finance, and policy to unlock Africa's creative capital. Africa's creative workforce is youthful and gender diverse. Over 60% are under 35, and young women constitute nearly half, but face systemic barriers in skill development and formal employment, according to Nigerian Bureau of Statistics 2024 figures. Theoretically, innovation economics views creativity as a form of knowledge capital. That means we have a lot of it in Africa. And it must be continually developed through learning and collaboration. To harness Africa's dynamic democratic dividend, we must reimagine training as a collaborative and inclusive system, supported by digital, financial, and policy infrastructure. So we need to build market-driven skill development. And talking about export beyond financing, what we do that is at the core of our approach to solving the problems in the market is to go into partnership and collaboration with various participants in the ecosystem. Because I think it was someone that mentioned it, you can't just do it alone. If you look at the way things are currently structured, at least in Nigeria, where we're very familiar with, there are too many silos. A lot is happening, but they're not integrated and harnessed to ensure that we're able to get that transformative effect of the interventions. So what we do in Bank of Industry is, first of all, our mission statement includes providing advisory services beyond financing. And to do that, at the core or at the base of our 3-year strategy that will end in 2027, and very critical to how we want to be able to make a difference in this market, is through partnership and collaboration. So we identify partners like Ananse now, Mastercard Foundation, Gates Foundation, UNDP, and come together to try and co-create solutions. We also partner, because we're a policy bank, our owned by Central Bank of Nigeria, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, and supervised by the Ministry of Industry and Investment. We use our convening capabilities to work with the likes of Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Standard Organization of Nigeria, Nigerian Investment Promotion Council, in order for us to be able to bring the expeditions to bear with our MSMEs across the country. We go around the country trying to run business clinics, where we bring experts from the development partner space, the people who are already succeeding in their various creative spaces, and also the academia, in order for us to be able to intervene in the market. So I think essentially is basically setting up a collaborative framework using our convening capabilities and the access that we have to industries, to MSMEs, and to the creative players to truly help to package them to be ready for export. And we're in the committee on AFTA. So it means that we're also very conscious of what we need to do to support our enterprises to be export ready based on international guidelines. Thank you very much. Now, I can't hear you, Fee. I don't know if you heard me. No, I think you are muted. You are muted. So can anyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
I believe we have lost Ife.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? I do
Oh, you're back.
apologize. Okay, so you can hear me. Yes, I'm back. Dr. Issa, thank you very much for that comment. Mr. Sam, we're just going to move to you quickly because we are way behind time so that we can quickly wrap this up. I just wanted to speak about the models for scaling in other industries and other regions, I beg your pardon, like Asia, Latin America, Europe, where creative training has been effectively linked to export ecosystem learn from. Are there any models in other regions that we can learn from, that we can bring into the African system? You know, a lot of times it may not be a one size fits all, but are there specific areas for export that we could bring or learn from other regions?
Great, yes. So because of time, I'm just going to focus on two particular areas where I think we can learn a lot from other parts of the world. Training and IP protection. And training specifically around vocational skills and institutes and institutions that are set up specifically to deliver vocational qualifications. In Africa, parents want their children to become doctors and lawyers and accountants because of the prestige associated with those professions. But you go to some other countries, and when you see the plumber or the electrician's bill that he gives you, you will respect him because his bill is more than that of what you will pay the lawyer or the accountant. So there's a lot of opportunity in ensuring that we structure vocational education, apprenticeships. Countries like Japan, South Korea have really excelled at these models of vocational training and apprenticeships. And then the other one I'd want to talk about is the other area where I think we can learn from other parts of the world is the importance of strong IP frameworks, particularly around cultural products or cultural assets. Sake, rice wine from Japan, or silk kimonos from Japan, champagne from France. There's so many regions in the world that have invested in the IP protection of their cultural heritage. In Africa, we haven't done that. Anybody can make ashoke and call it ashoke. Anybody can make kente anywhere in the world, not follow the traditional methods of weaving. I think it was Bayo who was talking about the weavers that we have across Africa and this really phenomenal skills, weaving skills that we have in abundance across the continent. But what IP protections are we putting in place for these techniques and methods and creative products so that we can charge a premium? Because the idea, the IP, the know-how originated from our parts of the world. The same way that you cannot just call sparkling wine champagne and charge the same for it. It has to come from France. It not only has to come from France, it has to come from a particular region of France in order for you to qualify to use those, some of those labeling phrases. So I think there's a lot more that can be done in these two particular areas around vocational training and also IP protections for our cultural assets. I believe we appear to have lost Ify again. Okay, Ify, you back?
Yes, I am back. I do apologize.
Yes, so to summarize, two things.
All right, yeah.
Two things we can learn from the rest of the world.
Sorry, say that again.
Training. I said to summarize because I don't know if you heard where we lost you. Two things where I think we can learn, two areas where we can learn a lot from the rest of the world. The respect for vocational training and the importance of vocational training for our creative industries, and then the IP frameworks and the protections for local, indigenous, cultural skills that produce cultural products. The same way that you cannot just call white wine from any sparkling white wine champagne unless it comes from a particular region of France, you should not be able to call anything made anywhere by any method they choose. You shouldn't be able to call it kente, or you shouldn't be able to call it ashoke or adire. It has to be made in a particular way with our traditional skills in a particular region so that our creatives can also profit from their cultural assets.
All right, thank you very much, Sam, for that. Before we take the final round, Dr. Issa, I would like to extend this question to you. We know, looking at Bank of Industry's mandate, it extends beyond financing to include strengthening local value chains and supporting sectoral development. So how can financial institutions with Bank of Industry, like partners like Bank of Industries, partner with other industries to ensure that they're facilitating more training to also co-develop facilities as well? Because if we take a look at the numbers, I already mentioned that Africa is teeming with a huge youth population. How can they partner, with other facilities to ensure that they are extending the training to the youth across?
Okay, thank you. So I will just quickly mention the fact that one of the ways to truly create value that will cause positive social change in our space is to go through the use of structures and thematic areas. That way you'll be able to measure and monitor and evaluate the outcomes within a reasonable time frame. So BOI, I used to work in GT Bank, so I'm sorry. So BOI has 6 thematic areas, and the bulk of what I'm discussing here revolves around MSMEs, women, and youth. So we have MSME as one of the thematic areas, youth and skills, gender-led businesses, digital economy, infrastructure, and climate action. So every day we come to work, we're measuring those particular, how our intervention is panning out in those particular, along those thematic lines. We also have been actively involved with co-creating solutions with other development partners and ecosystem players like AFDB, ISDB, AFD, and we have under the IDES program, it's $680 million program of the federal government, and we're the implementing agency. It has 4 components, one of which is just administrative. The other 3 are, and I think they speak to what we're saying here, capacity building. And on the capacity building side, honestly, between you and I, what is critical for us to do and we're doing is to begin to look at platform as a business. And what are the platform providers? Ananse, all the ESOs, enterprise support organizations, universities, higher institutions. So again, it boils down to the issue of collaborating and partnering with various ecosystem players, especially on the capacity building side, people who have the platforms to provide this training for the youth to get the right level of skills in the creative and digital space. And of course, our familiar terrain is access finance. Another thing that came out in the earlier presentations is a bit about lack of infrastructure. So the IDES program, the third component, apart from capacity building and access to finance, is catalytic infrastructure. So innovation hubs, I mean, even before IDES came on board, we already have, as at last count, about 18 innovation hubs across different universities in Nigeria. And in recent times, we have conversations with UNDP to be able to co-create more solutions, especially with respect to the ones that are created at youth, women, and of course, MSMEs. And I think all this ultimately will help us to be able to create the required intervention and cause the impact that is required to lift our people out of the doldrums and leave no one behind. Thank you. I don't know if you heard me, but if he has gone off again.
Dr. Issa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, loud and clear. Bio.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to add to what you just said and what Dr. Sam rightly said as well. One of the key things is we need to realize that we need to cook what we want to eat in this industry. There are so many things we see for the future, and there are so many things that we want for the future. And we've seen global best practices, we've seen benchmarks, across the world. But we need to also realize that we are the ones that will build that future. And all thanks to institutions like Ananse, thanks to institutions like Sikera, Bank of Industry, what you're doing with IDA's program, TEF as well. But one of the things that brings people like us to realization is that the future we want is going to be progressive as well. We need to be patient with that reality. It's going to be progressive. And progressive is, for someone like us now, where I'm sitting right now is 32 hectares of land infrastructure. We are building the biggest creative village in Africa. And it is not word of mouth. It has been a lot of sweat and blood to get to this point. But we know that what the ecosystem needs is a whole lot: catalytic infrastructure, shared facility, community of practice. Talking about the women, we need to bring them somewhere. Whether they know how to sell or trade is a different conversation. They even need to be in a cluster where all of this information can be shared, where they can even have access to production, where they can have a place where their kids can be taken care of while they are learning. So it's an ecosystem that we need to enable. And for us at Ananse Africa, that is our assignment, to create an ecosystem, because the future that we need to cook is the future that brings everything together. Because what is happening, we are training, but people are not trading. That is a gap. So we do a lot of training, people are not trading. That's one gap. Another gap is where people are
I think we've lost Bayo.
Yes, we can't really
The
hear
internet
Bayo,
god is not with us
whilst
today.
maybe he reconnects. Okay, Bayo, we lost
Can
you
you guys
for a
hear me?
second. We lost you for a second. Yes, we can hear you now. We lost you. We've lost you again, Bayo. But as he's, sorting out his internet, so we're just gonna swiftly move on to the very last round, where we're just gonna wrap up because we have run out of time. Bayo, I don't know if you can hear us, but we're just gonna wrap this up. So with this closing round, I would just like for each of the panelists who are still here to just name one actionable step to make Africa's creative training ecosystem globally competitive within the next 5 years. If you were given one actionable step, like what would that actionable step? Obviously, looking from your own perspective and from your own expertise.
Who would you like to go first?
Mr. Sam, you could go ahead.
I can go. Okay, so my one actionable thing would be the preponderance of vocational skills and vocational certification. I would love to see a future where the roadside tailor has a certificate. The roadside tailor in Ikorodu or Kano has got a certificate from the National Board for Technical Education, which is the body in Nigeria that certifies technical programs. Because once that, and we have lots of skilled tailors who may have never seen the inside of a classroom. We have lots of skilled artisans and weavers who have never seen the insides of the classroom, who can't speak English, but that doesn't matter. They don't have to have gone to school to be great at what they do. There are lots of Japanese, Korean, Chinese artisans who can't speak English but are incredibly skilled and earn a lot of their money from their skill because they have certification, because there's a framework under which they can easily get that certificate. So if I had one assignment for myself, it would be to get tens, if not hundreds of thousands of artisans and creatives certified, and that becomes a stepping stone for them for their participation in the formal economy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Dr. Issa, can we hear from you, please?
Okay, I mean, we're doing a lot already, but we probably need to do more convening and work with people who are providing the solutions, the platforms, to scale the model via hubs in regional centers. And then we can also try to drive hybrid or virtual or physical training interventions, mobile training labs, I already mentioned business skills, and PPPs to build creative hubs outside capitals, because there've been too much of a lot has spoken about Lagos and Johannesburg and maybe Nairobi and stuff. So we need to try to work towards achieving national coverage by riding on available digital infrastructure while waiting to scale when things get better as far as digital platform is concerned. Thank you.
We seem to have lost Ife again. So Dr. Rita, do you want to go with your one big assignment?
Yes, I think honestly, I'm really going to echo what you said, Sam, and absolutely agree. Even Dr. Issa, we must begin to reimagine what's the pathway to skills development looks like. How do you merge scaling with production within trade? And that's part of what you mentioned around the TVET aspect of it. Because if we're not deliberately considering beyond the classroom, there must be a hybrid situation that exists where that exposure to live production environments then feeds into trade. So, of course, what you said, if you're not certifying along that journey, you're going to see real output from a trade perspective, but also from a capacity perspective. So yeah, absolutely agreed. And I think for us, that's what's been key. What is the infrastructure that needs to happen for this? What are the shared production spaces that need to exist for this? What are the tools, shared tools for trade that need to exist for this? Because then ultimately we'll start to see more viable products coming out. We'll start to see more trade conversations coming about. And then, of course, if this is certified along that journey, then fantastic.
Great, welcome back, Ife.
All right,
hand
thank you.
over the
yes, thank you so much, Rita. All right, Mbaya, let's hear from you, please.
Thank you. With the little time I have for the internet to stay stable, I will say thank you to everyone. I love what you said, Dr. Sam, about the formalized training certification. But what is also important is that we create a robust ecosystem, an ecosystem that is end to end, so that we don't have, people being trained, but they cannot trade, or people being trained, but they cannot prototype, or people being able to train and prototype, but they cannot sell. All of this must be woven into one ecosystem. And that is the best way that we can actually ensure that the knowledge we are transferring is holistic and no component of this vertical is left behind. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to all our panelists for today. You've spoken so intelligently. We ensured that this panel session was as robust as possible, from speaking about the training deficits to the issues that we've seen with funding, to ensuring that, these creatives have access to different markets across the globe, to also ensuring that, their skills are up to par with global standards. And, like Bio mentioned, ensuring that these solutions are end to end. That yes, when these creatives have access to training, when they have access to resources, they should also have access to markets. They should also be able to scale their different businesses. Thank you so much. Remember, we had said this from the very beginning, is that we're moving from those anecdotes to actionable steps. What can be done in terms of policies? What can be done in terms of investment? And these are some of such conversations that we've had. So a big thank you to all our speakers. Before we actually wrap this up completely, there's going to be a little survey that is going to pop up shortly. I just had to mention, so no one moves an inch. So we're going to do just a little survey. But even before that, thank you so much to Bayo, who represented Tikera Africa. He's the founder of Tikera Africa. Lauren England, who had to leave, unfortunately, senior lecturer in creative economies, King's College London, as well as Rita Ngenzi, founding and managing director, Africa Creative Alliance, Dr. Issa Omagu, the Chief Strategy and Development Officer and Divisional Head, Strategy, Policy and Research, Bank of Industry, and of course, Sam Mensah, who is the CEO and founder of Ananse Africa, and Dr. Hakeem Onasanya, who's the Director of Operations, Tony Elumelu Foundation. I believe the conversation does not end here. The conversation continues because indeed Ananse Africa has ensured that they are in a position to help creatives across Africa through the different solutions that they're providing. We did mention the design center that was launched the other day, ensuring that African creatives have access to those resources or those machineries that are very expensive that they would never have had access to if not for solutions such as this. And so the conversation indeed continues. Now, speaking about the survey, there's going to be a survey in just a few seconds. We would love for you to, fill out that survey. And I know that the team is going to put up a QR code. So the QR code is there. Please scan the QR code for the survey. This will just take you a few seconds. So please just scan it. I'm just going to give you a few seconds to do that. And then we will wrap this up. Okay, I think that's all the time that we have. So thank you to Ananse Africa and of course Mastercard Foundation that supports Ananse Africa, and also both the emerging markets who this event was done in collaboration with. Please ensure that you follow Ananse Africa across all social media platforms so that you see exactly what they are getting up to. It's been such a pleasure moderating this session. My name is Ifnaya Igu. I'm a broadcast journalist. Until next time, ensure that you are supporting Africa's creative industry through your own sphere of influence. I believe that we all have our little ways that we could support the industry. So ensure that you are a contribution to the ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ify. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.